This is episode 82 with Brandon Fong.
Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, the show that empowers you to become the hero of your life's journey. With your host, Brian Tier.
Don't tell, show. What is up, everyone? This is your host, as always, Brian Tier, and welcome back to another episode of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, episode 82, and those were the wise words of this week's inspiring guest, Brandon Fong. Now, before we get into the episode, just a shout out to our sponsor. It's Rooster, which is the awesome alarm clock app that allows you to wake up to whatever tone you choose, whether it be voice notes from friends and family, or inspiring channels, news headlines, sports reports, and so much more. You can check that out on the App Store or the Google Play Store. And again, that is Rooster Alarm and Audio Treats. Right, onto this week's show, and Brandon Fong is a college student, entrepreneur, and author whose new book, Leverage, became a bestseller in 4 categories on Amazon, got featured in the Huffington Post, and received reviews from Kevin Harrington, one of the original sharks on Shark Tank. Now, growing up, Brandon didn't have much, but he realized that he could change the things in his control and became determined to make the most of his situation. He immersed himself in personal development, grew his skills, started building a network, and learned about entrepreneurship. Brandon has since become the president of the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, worked on and failed at a startup, studied abroad, acquired $30,000+ in scholarships, built a blog that gets hundreds of visitors a month, and published a best-selling book while maintaining a 3.9 GPA, pursuing a double major in entrepreneurship and marketing with a digital marketing emphasis and a minor in Spanish. Whew, that is a mouthful. Now, Brandon's mission in life is to unleash awesomeness and to continuously learn, grow, and teach everything he knows. And in this episode, he just did just that. You're going to learn how to find time for all your priorities, something I know we all battle with. Smart productivity hacks to optimize your workflow. The role of formal education in the near future. How to learn or study more effectively. Do's and don'ts for finding and working with a mentor, how to identify the impact that you want to make and leave on the world, and the biggest misconception about finding your purpose. As always, you can get the links and resources mentioned in this episode at briantier.com/082. But for now, guys, let's go hang out with Brandon. Welcome back, everyone, and a big welcome to today's guest. I'm excited to be speaking to Brandon Fong. Brandon, welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be chatting. You reached out originally. I get a few of these now, like people looking for someone to review the new book that they've written. And I was really excited when I saw your book, which we'll speak about later on. But for people who don't know who and what it is that you do, why don't you tell us a bit about that and your quarter life story?
Awesome. Well, I guess the question is, where do I start? So I guess I can start with where I am now. So I am a 21-year-old college student. This is my senior year. And I'm an obsessed entrepreneur. I guess you could say I'm a maniac on a mission, and I love anything that has to do with business or marketing related. So the story I always like to tell is in high school, I got involved with an organization called DECA. And it's a business organization for students that are primarily focused on business initiatives. And I started off because my parents were always entrepreneurs. I always saw them working really hard. And there was a competition that I could go and place or put together a business plan. So I went and I competed. I was 16 years old. I was practicing my brains out, ended up taking first place and was so excited. And I found out I had the opportunity to qualify for the international competition. And I was riding this wave of enthusiasm as I got off the stage. And then my advisor was like, hey, this trip's going to cost you $1,300. And I didn't grow up with that many resources growing up. And I went to a high school where their parents had no issue with whipping out $1,300, but I was forced to problem solve. So my parents actually ended up introducing me to someone who was the president and founder of a nonprofit organization called Secure Futures. Now it used to be called Make a Difference Wisconsin, but she teaches kids about financial literacy. And she just took me under her wing and taught me everything that she knew about fundraising and entrepreneurship and opened her connections to me. And that's kind of when I got that little taste. Is what she did is she said, Brandon, this is the one advice I can give you for entrepreneurs. I know some people have said it before, but if you ask for money, you get advice. And if you ask for advice, you get money. And she sat me down, introduced me to these phenomenal entrepreneurs, and I ended up fundraising more than enough money to go to this trip 2 times over. And that was kind of just my little bit of a taste of what it was like to get in front of successful entrepreneurs and have those kind of conversations. And that's kind of how I got into this whole questioning basic assumptions about what everything is doing and seeing if you can do the opposite, and ways to be able to build your brand in ways that nobody can take that away from you, and how can you build that up and leverage more of that. So that's kind of what ended up turning into the book. And I'm excited to share more of that as we dive in.
Yeah, I love that. And I know we'll touch on mentorship later. It's another topic that I'm also really passionate about. You said that's the story you like to tell. What's the story you don't like to tell? I know you're only 21, so it's like you've hardly even reached the quarter life stage.
Right.
But what's the kind of the nitty gritty of the backstory that caused you to become so driven and motivated to, like start your own business and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so I mentioned it very briefly. My parents, I always watched them. They're entrepreneurs. If I were to own a restaurant, I would be a fifth generation restaurant owner. So I grew up in my dad's restaurant. I was the little kid in the back. They would try to shut up. They'd give me a TV, make sure I wasn't running or put me in front of the TV, make sure I wasn't running all over the place and disturbing customers. But yeah, I always saw them working, and it was always so inspired by everything they did. And started reading self-development books when I was like 12 years old, and they were always willing to have those kind of deep conversations with me from a young age. And I just got addicted to surrounding myself with those kinds of people. And I'm a strong believer that you're the combination of the 5 people you surround yourself with. I know that's really common in podcasts, but I just got thrown into that environment and was addicted and kept going from there.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I know you said that you would cringe that the old rusty car would come and pick you up after school, and you'd kind of hope that no one would notice. And then something that you said on your website is you learned in high school that you can't change what's outside of your control, but you can choose to focus on what is inside of your control and work on that. And it's kind of like one of my favorite parts of personal development is stoicism, and that's very much along the same lines. But tell us more about that kind of epiphany that you had.
About the realizing that you can have things in your control. Yeah, I mean, I just I look at so many of my friends that are entrepreneurs or people that are looking at changing things, and the one commonality they all have is that they may not have had the resources, but they learned how to be resourceful. So being able to look inside and realize that there's no point in sitting here and complaining about things that you wish happened when you could be using that time and effort and energy to be putting forth into things that you can take control over. So lots of people are looking in the past, and they're spending lots of time in the past, but I'd rather have a healthy balance between the present and the future, where I accept the things that have happened, but take the experience and the people that I've met to move forward with that. So I don't know if that's anything you wanted more clarification on that, or if that's what you were looking for.
Yeah, that's perfect. And what I loved is, I think you gave this example on your site, which I'll link up to in the show notes, but you mentioned that, you couldn't choose the way, you were brought up, or like how much money your family had, but what you could choose to do is surround yourself with the right people, get on societies and that kind of thing, and like volunteer and work really hard. And study. You could choose to control those things, and you've had like a lot of success in your college years. You were the president of the Collegiate Entrepreneur Society, and you started and failed a startup, and you did 2 majors and wrote your book. I want to know, how did you when I was in university, there was no way that I was even thinking of that many different things. But how did you kind of find time and balance all those responsibilities?
Yeah, that's a phenomenal question. I kind of hit the ground running when I came in. I found the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, and I'm a huge believer that the way university has turned in the last few years, or I don't know if you want to give it a time frame, but I believe it's a lot less about the university itself and more of how you utilize the resources at the university. So, I was interested in the entrepreneurship major, which is an option here at the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, but I came in knowing I'm going to tap into these resources and, make these connections with other student entrepreneurs who are driven, and set myself up so that, what I'm doing is the average. It's not like I'm doing all this crazy stuff amongst the friends that I've decided to surround myself with. What I'm doing isn't anything spectacular. And I was always challenging to put myself in front of those people who expected that of me. Along the way, I always like to share tidbits and stuff like that of things that have helped me. But I'm always looking at taking the biggest adjustments that I could possibly make and knocking those off. So I took my time and I'm like, where am I spending the most of my time and how can I make that kind of stuff better? So I don't know, Brian, if you want me to share some of my favorite productivity strategies or stuff that goes down that line, because I'm a total nerd when it comes to.
Totally.
Cool.
Let's dive into that, man.
Okay, cool. Yeah, for sure. So, obviously a big place that we're spending a lot of our time these days is on the computer. So I've done lots of crazy things when it comes to optimizing my workflow and making sure that I'm spending time on the right things instead of getting distracted by the shiny object syndrome. So I guess one of the things I can give away that I just made the switch to, and it's kind of freaked me out when I decided to do it, but I decided to do it anyways. Have you heard of the Dvorak keyboard layout, Brian?
The Dvorak keyboard layout? I have not. I've clearly not.
Okay. Here's a big one. So when QWERTY was invented, the traditional QWERTY keyboard layout, it was designed for typewriters in the 1800s. And the idea behind it is that you didn't want the keys or the arms that came down and printed on the paper, they didn't want them to clog. And so like when you look at the QWERTY keyboard layout, it's pretty much random. And there really wasn't that much thought behind it. The guy that originally invented it even wanted the word typewriter to be spelt out on the top row. So that obviously doesn't have much to do with anything. So since the years, they went out and they developed more efficient keyboard layouts. And this one called Dvorak was the one that was invented. So it's got all of the vowels on the left-hand side and the most used consonants on the right-hand side, so that over time it improves your typing efficiency. So if you compare it against QWERTY, only 32% of the typing is done on the home row with QWERTY compared to 70% with Dvorak. So that's just one crazy thing. People look at my computer, they're like, what the heck is, I know, they're like, what the heck is this thing? Like, it looks like complete, craziness, but I'm looking at tweaking those things that have a big impact over time, whether they have a short-term sacrifice or they'll pay off long-term. So that's just one of them. And another one I like to share all the time is, I deleted social media from my phone. I turned that off. I turned my phone on grayscale. I don't know if you've ever heard of people doing that.
I've done that.
You've done that? It's just like now I turn my phone back on color. I'm like, holy crap, like my eyes can't even handle this anymore. But just kind of like desensitizing yourself from all the craziness that's happening of them trying to pull at your attention, shutting off notifications. So those are a few things that I do that have definitely helped me to become more efficient. And I could keep going on, but those are just a few of them.
Yeah, what's funny is you mentioned how people look at your keyboard and think it's crazy. But to me, I look at the standard keyboard and I'm like, why the hell would you put a QWERTY as like
it makes no sense.
Like to me, that's crazy. There's zero logic behind it, other than like the typewriters in the 1800s, like you mentioned.
Right.
So that's pretty cool, and I'll have to link that up in the show notes. So do you have like a kind of a Bluetooth keyboard that you attach to your laptop?
Well, I use Mac, Google Chrome setup, so you can change the setting directly on your computer. And I just bought keyboard stickers that went over it. I know we were chatting a little bit before. Yeah, so I know we were chatting a little bit before we got on too, but another huge thing I always tell people, you got to increase your listening speed. So I know you said that you have had a bunch of people do this, but I mean, if you use Google Chrome, video speed controller, I mean, if you're watching a 30-minute video and you can understand all the same information in 15 minutes, that's a phenomenal thing. It's like, I believe that as entrepreneurs and top performers that it's not about consuming the most content, it's consuming the right content. So once you kind of use that information filter first and realize that, hey, this piece of content that I want to consume is directly applicable to helping me accomplish my number one goal, if you've already done that diagnostic, and then if you can set up systems to help yourself learn more efficiently, increasing your listening speed is a phenomenal way to do that. And it's something that's helped me so much and changes so many people when I tell them about it. They're like, I didn't know I could do this.
Yeah, to me, that's like a non-negotiable. Like, I
It
think
is.
that's a bare minimum that everyone should be doing, even if it's not at 2x, because that does get
Right.
quite fast.
How high do you go up to, Brian?
Yeah, I go to 2x.
Okay, yeah, it's crazy. People look at me. I'll go up to 4 sometimes just to like,
Oh.
I'll understand what's going on at 4, but I can't fully comprehend it. So like, I'll use it to go through the information, and then once I'm like, okay, this is the information I need to listen to,
Yeah.
I'll slow it back down. But people are like, this is gibberish. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's very cool. If it's a video, I sometimes go to 1.5 if I find that 2 is a bit fast.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. You touched on this earlier, but I'd be interested to find out on what your view is on the role of formal education in the near future and even the present. Because you mentioned how you decided to use college rather than just go to college. And the reason I bring this up is I was at a Startup Grind event recently, and the guest speaker, who's a big entrepreneur, he was actually one of the co-founders of Amazon Web Services, and he was saying, someone asked him this question, and he said that colleges and universities now, it's not about the content, it's about the collaboration and the opportunities that it opens up, because you're in this network of other people and like the next generation of entrepreneurs. And a mentor of mine said the same thing. He said that taking a job, he kind of sees as the same situation where it's not a bad thing to take a 9 to 5. Even if your goal is to be an entrepreneur, it's not a bad thing to take a 9 to 5 job if it's going to develop the skills that you need in order to be the entrepreneur you want to become, or it's going to put you in touch with the right people to kind of take your step forward. But I'm just interested to hear what your view is on the role of sort of tertiary education.
Yeah, so it's a crazy thing just because I think the way the educational system is developed, it's not going to be changing very, the core function of what it does isn't going to be changing anytime fast. So I think it's up to us to take that into our responsibility on how we are to best use that. So I think at the core of it, it really comes down to who's willing to have interesting conversations. Because, so much of the education is passive where you're sitting and listening to a teacher, but the real learning comes when you're playing around and interacting with that content and having those conversations that'll, kind of blow your mind. And there's some people out there they're going out there and changing it. I don't know if you've heard of Seth Godin's alt MBA that he's got going on. There's some people that are, out there making a difference in how education is being done. So, like I said, I think it's best that we take it into our hands to control it. And, maybe we'll see that change in the near future, but I'm excited to see where it's going to go.
And do you think that everyone should go to college, or do you think it's, only suited for certain people?
So I'll tell you it depends on your situation, but I'll tell you my favorite part about being a student. I call it pulling the cute student card. So there's a big difference between being a senior in college and a freshman in the real world. So you have this beautiful opportunity where you're the student, you're just learning, and you have this opportunity to connect with these high-powered entrepreneurs or people that you respect in the industry because you're expected that you don't know what's going on, and you can use that to your advantage. There's a phenomenal book out there by Charlie Hohen. It's called The Recession-Proof Graduate, I believe.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Check that out. I mean, all these people on their quarter life comeback, like if you can master the art of email and being able to provide value, like that'll take you places. And if you know how to position yourself and continually try to make yourself more valuable, that's what's going to, really pay dividends when you're out there in the real world, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. All right, got it. So I want to get into the book, Leverage, and tell us before we get into that where the idea for the book came in, and just what kind of spurred you to writing it.
Yeah, so something we didn't touch on yet is I actually studied abroad twice in my college career so far, and I'm a huge person when it comes to, you kind of gleaned from the story in the beginning about how I was able to fundraise for the trip. When I came into college, I'm like, I'm going to do the same thing, and I did it with scholarships. So I ended up studying abroad for free using scholarships, have won over $30,000 now in my collegiate career, and one of those scholarships I won when I studied abroad was supposed to be a follow-on service project for the Gilman International Scholarship. So you're supposed to inspire other people to study abroad and provide a platform to be able to do that. So I started blogging on my website, and I was, putting out content and just seeing what people were interested in, and, really got some very positive feedback from people that it was enough for me to continue working with it after the formal period of the scholarship was over. I like to say that I didn't write a book, I harvested a book, because, I was looking at what people were super interested in. And that's kind of what I used. I ended up building a launch team, over 500 students that were giving me direct feedback on what they wanted and didn't want in the book. And it was just a great opportunity for me to continue building my brand and then, really take that next step to helping people in a more formal way.
That's really smart. And it's like, I know you're as geeky as I am about online business and all that kind of thing, but it's a typical, like, don't build it and then hope they come. Like, ask them what they want and then build it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the book is divided into 4 parts, and I'd love to go through those briefly for people listening. So the first part is all about setting the foundation. What's that all about?
Yeah, so the book was designed in chronological order. It's called Leverage: Escape the College Rat Race, Design the Life You Want, and Take the Real World by Storm. And I kind of alluded to it a little bit before, but I truly believe that you need to just continue to build yourself up in a way that people can't take it away from you. And how can you best use what you've built you up to get you to negotiate for what you want? So, like I said, I was doing the validation with college students, and we're looking for the perspective of different students in the different periods of their journey. So you got the freshmen and sophomores that are coming in, they're just trying to get used to the university scene. So how can you best utilize those first few years? So setting the foundation is more about, making sure you're setting yourself up for the rest of your college career. So the first chapter I have in there is how to correctly choose your major. So what I'm doing is I'm setting a foundation for students to not just sit and take some classes and hope that they're going to figure out what they're going to do, but rather provide a framework that will help them test and get in front of people that are where they already want to be, and show them how they can be able to get in front of those people and begin building their network to see if it's something they want to do. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of that first setting the foundation is how to correctly choose your major. And then it goes into how to get better grades. And, we already nerded about my productivity hacks, but I share some of those a lot more in depth of, what I'm doing in the mornings and going into that standpoint. So that's the setting foundation aspect.
And I know a part of it is, more effective methods of studying, but this will apply to people not just in college. Like, learning to me never ends. What are some tips you have for more effective studying or learning?
Yeah, so I already mentioned the 2 times the speed thing, but another thing that I really like doing is I'll go this way for learning. I think one of the biggest distractions is that, so many of us are reading something and we get to the end of a page and we don't even really remember what we read, or we're working on something and we're getting distracted and we're clicking all over the place. So I think one of the most important things for digesting and learning new content now is really understanding how to focus on certain things. So are you a proponent of the Pomodoro technique, Brian? Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the one thing that I'm constantly using when I'm learning is not only am I using the Pomodoro technique, but I have what I call, this is my version of the Pomodoro technique. I'll have what I would call a distraction paper on the side, so that as I come up with something, I'll write it down, and then that kind of satisfies my craving for wanting to chase that next shiny thing, and then I'll continue to move forward with what I wanted to be doing. So that is one of the biggest things that I think when it comes to learning is just making sure that you're setting up systems to stay concentrated and not get distracted. So
yeah, and I'll say too, I do the same thing with having a note for things I think about, and then getting on with what I was planning on doing. It's amazing when you write it down how many things you see at the end of the day you've thought about that weren't really related to the task that you had.
Sometimes it's just like, man, I gotta what's going on in my head, and that's where meditation comes in too. If you're interested in just getting better control of understanding that these are thoughts and kind of just watching them pass instead of interacting with them, that's another thing that I practice that has really helped me with that.
Yeah, and the thing there is if you don't have sort of limits or boundaries in place, you follow some of these things down the rabbit hole. But if you write them down, you see some of them were so meaningless or pointless that you don't even have to follow up on them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's really cool. And then you mentioned how to pick the right major. If someone's already done that, how can they know if they've picked the right one?
I think that the number one thing you can do, and you talked about how important mentors are to you in the past, but it's like if you can really get the opportunity to get into that field, that's a thing. And it's funny because it's like so many people graduate and not even end up doing anything with their major. So it's like if you're already in that path, I wouldn't really worry about it too much, just because so many people have done phenomenally well without using their major, but just tap into that power of and believe in yourself that you can continue to take what you've learned and apply it to whatever you're looking at doing.
Yeah, got it. All right, so the second phase of the book is all about mental and physical leverage points. What do you get into there?
Yeah, so we already talked about the vulnerability as leverage. This is the cute student card aspect, is learning how to reach out to mentors. I've had the phenomenal opportunity to meet some phenomenal people in my career. I've met Jeff Hoffman, founder of Priceline.com. I got the endorsement from Kevin Harrington, original Shark on Shark Take, on my book. So, learning how to reach out to those kinds of people and add value to them and use that cute student card. And in that section, I also talk about how I won that trip to the Nationals where I fundraised and how I exactly approach those entrepreneurs and give you the scripts to be able to do that. And that kind of ties directly into mentors as leverage, how to work with a mentor and the best ways to get value out of your time with them. And then the next few parts are basically what I would call, I feel like most students don't do this, and we were looking at the traditional college student, but basically building a database of ways for you to solve problems. Because in the real world, actually, I can't say I'm in the real world, but the thing is like, at the end of the day, all we're doing is solving problems, and you have to set up systems for yourself to be able to solve those efficiently and effectively. So I teach students how to build those resources for themselves so that they have their own database that's constantly growing, so that they can be able to tap into that when it comes to a problem being thrown at them. So that's kind of the essence of the knowledge as leverage and resources as leverage at the end of that section.
And what does that database of problem solving look like? Is it like a spreadsheet where they keep ideas, or what is that?
Yeah, mine primarily falls into the organizations that I have in my Google Chrome bookmarks. So I teach people how to do that. And then it also comes into, I'm a huge podcast nerd. So it's like, that's another thing, is like making sure that you have knowledge streams of places that you're learning the correct information from. And this is the thing that I've learned over the past few years specifically, is that I just, when I was first starting off, is I would just have so many different things I'd be learning from. And I realized that there really wasn't any correlation between everything. I was just like, oh my God, I got to subscribe to this new newsletter, got to listen to this new podcast and knowledge. And so like, that's the important thing, is making sure you're having that filter. And, so not only are you learning how to categorize that stuff, and making sure that it's helping you to achieve your number one goal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been, I had the same frustrations where I was trying to take in content from so many different places, and it's still a work in progress, and I'm by no means perfected the process, but now, like, I'm okay with not being up to date with all the podcasts I'm subscribed to, where it's more of a case of like, okay, this is the thing I'm learning right now. These are the sources of information that are going to help me learn that thing. And then you mentioned mentorship, a big favorite topic of mine. What are some of your basic do's and don'ts with finding and working with a mentor?
Yeah, so my biggest do is an agenda. It's like so many people are so unprepared. So it's like, if you go above, even if it's not just even if it's not a formal mentor of yours, if you're cold outreaching to somebody and you're going to get on a phone call with them, having a very clear outline of what specifically you want to cover in that time with them shows them that you're not screwing around. You're there to learn something, you're there to provide value, and you're going to get that done. So I usually do that in the form of a Google Doc. I'll send it to them ahead of time, just so that they are understanding of what I'm looking at talking about and what I'm looking at accomplishing. And the other thing I'd say that's really important with mentors is that we think as the mentee, there's no way for us to provide value, but there's so many different ways you can provide value to them. And the number one way you can provide value to them is showing them that you're using what you're using, the stuff that they taught you in their mentor session. So, people so many times just get off the phone, and then the next time they talk to them is on the phone again. But if you can send an email to your mentor and say, hey, we talked about XYZ in the last time we talked. These are the results I got from it. I'm thinking about doing A, B, and C. How would you tweak this? So showing that you're prepared and providing value, and then showing them that you're getting results from what they're doing is the fuel that they need to keep moving forward with you. And that's the number one thing that I feel like people don't understand when it comes to mentors.
Yeah, and I'd add to that too is if you have a question that you want to take to a mentor, don't just go and ask it. Go to them and say, like, here's what I've already tried.
Right, exactly.
And research, like the thing that you're going to ask, the person's probably written about it on their blog or on Quora or something already. So do your research before you just go ask someone something. Cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. So the third section of the book is all about online leverage points, which I think is a cool topic that I'm very interested in. The way we use social media and putting out a public profile and that kind of thing. But talk us through what people can expect to find over there.
Yeah, so I'm a huge LinkedIn nerd. I'll kind of skip around a little bit here, but I think the two core parts in today's world is control the platform. This goes back to the philosophy of controlling what you can control. At the end of the day, like if LinkedIn decided to shut down, if Twitter decided to shut down, that is on somebody else's platform, and you can't control that. So the number one thing I'll tell people to focus on, and maybe this isn't 100% applicable to everyone, but I believe that if you're really looking at standing out, you got to have that platform you control, and that's your personal website. Mm-hmm. That's your personal brand. So if you don't already own your domain, go out and get that as soon as possible. There's some other Brandon Fong out there that's stealing all my usernames, and I'm going to find him one day. I don't know where he is, but my URL is Brandon-Fong. So do a way to make yourself different. Get that personal brand out there, and then I'm a huge proponent for LinkedIn too. Again, I get so many requests from students, and I just want to throw up and vomit at half of their their LinkedIn summaries, just because they use all these adjectives to describe themselves. And that's the one thing I'll tell people about building their personal brand is don't show, tell, or don't tell, show, so it's like, sorry, I switched that around. But, don't say I'm an ambitious, outgoing student that is customer service oriented. No one cares about that. People want to know what you've done that proves that. So, when you're going out and building your brand, figure out a way to articulate what you want to say. Maybe you do want to describe that you're ambitious or outgoing, but don't say you're ambitious, outgoing. Describe the things that you've done that demonstrate that characteristic. So, those are the kind of things that I'm talking about, making yourself more valuable online so that you can then leverage that to get other things.
Yeah, I can't back that up enough. I keep saying to people that I think having a public profile and having a blog, even if you're not turning it into a business or don't plan to, just the fact that you're putting out there things that interest you and what you're passionate about, I firmly believe it inevitably leads to opportunities that you wouldn't have received without it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, what you were saying about the LinkedIn summaries, it's kind of like that cool saying that I keep saying again and again, which is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
How much you care, yep.
Cool. And then part of this section too is how to identify the impact that you want to make.
Yeah.
Is that linked to purpose? And, how do people identify that impact?
It's weird to say that, because it's like, at the end of the day, I think we have, every one of us, let me back up. I think one of the biggest mistakes is people feel like there's one life purpose that you should be chasing. And, this is me getting a little bit of philosophical here, but I think that people bear down on themselves too much of I got to get this one thing. And I think that there's multiple things that people can do with their life. But I do believe that there are certain things that shouldn't change. There are certain things about you that, will carry on no matter what you're doing. So I always said to people, I say it in my book, my thing that I think will never change is I'm here to unleash awesomeness. I'm here to work with people and try to bring out the best of whatever they're doing in whatever context I'm in. So right now I wrote the book for college students. So maybe I'm unleashing awesomeness for the college students. But, as I move forward in my career, I'm always looking at ways to provide value and bring the most out of people. So that's something that won't change. So it's less about finding that one thing that you're going to do for the rest of your life, but more about understanding ways that you can understand what's going to carry over and all the different things that you're going to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I actually think, I've had dozens of interviews with people about this topic, and obviously done my own studying and research and that kind of thing. And I actually think that everybody has the same purpose, which is to become the highest version of ourselves that we can in order to contribute to the greater good type of thing, to help other people. And within that, there'll be different missions along the way that all contribute towards that. So
Absolutely.
It's cool to hear that too. And then the fourth section is execution and beyond. And this is all about scholarships and relationship building and that kind of thing. What is your sort of number one tip when it comes to building relationships?
I think, again, it falls into that adding value to people. So many people are at networking events and they're there to trade business cards and it's game over from there. Look for ways, to provide value, even if it's a small thing. There are things that people care about. And here's another thing that when I think it comes to building relationships with people, if you're looking at targeting a VIP, look for their secondhand man, or like the person that's not as crazy up as them, but like one person that they're good friends with, that they talk with all the time, and provide value to them. And that's not something I do in my book, or talk about in my book, but it's something I've been getting into more of now. Is that there's always a way for you to provide value to someone. So when you're meeting with someone, be making sure that you're listening and not thinking about the next thing that you're going to say, but really be there in the moment and understand who they are as a person. And that kind of goes into the networking. And once you understand who they are, what motivates them, and what will make them happy, then that's when you can kind of move in and provide that value. So that's the one key takeaway I would say, is making sure that people are providing value and listening.
Yeah, I dig it. Brandon, we have spoken a lot about the book, but I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about what Operation 2% is.
Yeah. So, when I started writing with college students, I get some phenomenal results. I get it every once in a while. I'll have the student that's a go-getter and they're like, holy crap, I implemented all this stuff and I've had this huge impact. But I found myself when I was writing, I felt like I was trying to write for everyone. And I felt myself getting kind of watered down, because I'd want to write out and geek out about certain things that, would be more for those top performers, what I would call. And I just felt myself holding back. So, I kind of stepped back a little bit and reverse engineered, again, kind of like what I did with going into college, like who are the kind of people I want to be surrounding myself with, and did the same thing with who I want to be writing for. So it really honed in on like my friend group, the people that I'm surrounding myself, the people that aren't afraid to go out and try stuff. They're not afraid to have interesting conversations, and, would rather have an interesting conversation than go out and party. So what I've done with Operation 2%, and this is a brand new initiative that I'm working on, is I'm really focusing on those 2% of people that are really willing to go out there and take action. And I'm not really concerned about the other 98% of people. But, if you're more familiar with, wow, I'm blanking on his name. 1,000 True Fans, Kevin Kelly. That's what it is. Yeah. Focusing in on providing value to those 1,000 people. And I truly believe that there are 2% out of every 100 that are really out there willing to go do things, and that's who I'm looking at serving. So I'm looking at building a community with that and focusing my content more around those people and serving them to their highest level.
I love it. If you haven't heard this before, I've shared it a few times on the podcast. And that is, if you're 1 in a million, it means there's 7,000 other people exactly like you.
Right. Yeah, no, that's phenomenal. I haven't heard that, but I love it.
Cool. Well, Brandon, before we wrap up here, is there anything else you think is worth mentioning for people listening?
Yeah, I mean, this is a phenomenal journey. Thanks for having me on here. I did prepare a little bit of a thing for the guests on here. So if you guys go to brandon-fong.com/QLC, I put some stuff on there. If you kind of like some of those crazy things I'm talking about when it comes to computer optimization, and I created a piece of content that I would consider my first Operation 2% content. I called it 7 Systems Top Performers Use to Win. I'm putting that out there for you guys. I'm not going to put it behind a subscription wall, so you don't have to give me your email address for that. I only want people who what I would call our 2%ers, who are looking to go out there and make a difference. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to, is meeting other people who are out there that are doing phenomenal things and growing with them.
I love it, man. We're 2 peas in a pod here. I'm going to go check that out and definitely look at that keyboard setup. Brandon, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you go from, I was at like 110 words per minute with QWERTY, or 120, and I went to Dvorak and I'm at like 10. But like it improves over time. I'm not at that anymore because I switched, but it'll be frustrating, but it's worth it. Again, it's those small sacrifices that you make now, and then you can build up, and they'll be worth it over time. So
yeah, I'm keen to see that. Brandon, before we wrap up here, I've got some quick fire questions at the end. So just whatever comes to your head in a sentence or two is perfect. The first one, which is a little bit funny for you because you're only 21 still, but what do you wish you'd been told in your 20s?
All those years.
So let's say for you, what do you wish you'd been told up till now?
again, I'm gonna go back to the cute student card. Like, you have this phenomenal opportunity when you're young. Like, if you're some ambitious 14-year-old, like you can, if you're some business professional that has all the connections in the world and you make some cold outreach, they're probably not going to listen to you as much as some really going out there, some 14-year-old or 15-year-old that's like looking to make change. People will take you under your wing. So like, I know I used it a lot when I was younger, and I still use it now, but really, really take advantage of that. And that's something I would, go back and tell myself is like, you're taking it seriously already, but to step it up a bit, like use more of your time. It's like I'm graduating next year and I wish I would have used it more. And, I'm excited to teach people more about it so that they can tap into it themselves.
Yeah, well, listen, man, I was nowhere near on the same kind of mental playing field as you are now when I was 21. So I've no doubt you'll just grow from here. But what is the biggest opportunity for Quarter Lifers today?
I would say, we're in this phenomenal opportunity where things are growing, things are changing, and we don't have to be afraid that things are changing. So being able to, I think the biggest opportunity is it falls into being able to reach out to those people that you aspire to. And I make it a goal to not just connect with one new connection every single month, but make it a point to develop a relationship every single month. So I think that's a phenomenal opportunity for people to take that kind of a mindset, is to, it's not the quantity, but the quality, and, making sure you're developing those relationships and tapping into them, because all the best results that are out there come from who you know, not what you know. So definitely use that to your advantage.
Definitely. I like that. Before we wrap up here, Brandon, where can people go to find out more about you and Operation 2% and the book and everything else you got going on?
Yeah, so if you just go to my website, brandon-fong.com, you can play around in the top tabs there. I'll have information on Operation 2% and on my book. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's my other main spot is linkedin.com/in/Brandon S. Fong. So those are the two best places for people to contact me. And I have my email on my website. So if people are interested in contacting me, I have that all out there.
Awesome. I'll link up all of that in the show notes. And Brandon, before I get to the final question, I just want to take a second to acknowledge you for coming on today. But for even more than that, coming from your background and realizing that you didn't have to let anything that came before define you, and you could use your opportunities the way that you decided. And now helping other people kind of get set up and make the most out of college themselves. And the final question that I do have is, what one thing can listeners do this week to start creating their own quarter life comeback?
One thing you can do this week? That's a great question. I'd say reach out to one person. Even one person that you think, like, if you're stuck in a rut, like, use your skills and what you've built up of yourself so far and all the value that you've created, and use that to reach out to one person, and do that this week. Like set a timer and do it in the next 24 hours if you can. Because I think that's one of the things that people hold people back, because they think too much about things. So, put it in your calendar, like, this is due next week or in the next 24 or 48 hours. Reach out to that one person and begin building those relationships, because that's where the next momentum and the next movement is going to take you.
Brandon Fong, thank you so much for coming on the Quarter Life Comeback.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian.
So there you have it, guys and girls. That wraps up episode 82 of the Quarter Life Comeback podcast. And a big thanks to Brandon Fong for coming on the show today. Such an inspiring dude, and only 21 years old. It's super cool. If you like this one, please share it around on social media and shoot me a tweet at Brian Tier to let me know your biggest takeaway. For me, it was the fact that colleges and universities and any societies we join nowadays, it's not so much about the education or the content as much as it is the opportunities to collaborate and network and grow our skills that will serve us for our goals that we're working towards in the future. As always, you can get the links and resources we mentioned in this episode at briantier.com/082, and make sure you head on over to quarterlifecomeback.com to subscribe for even more goodness that I only share with email subscribers. Just a reminder once again, if you read the email last week, that I am looking to bring on an intern, someone to work with me in helping me grow my business, and at the same time, I will personally mentor you one-on-one to help you work towards your own goals. If you feel like you're the right person or you know that person, please shoot me an email, brian@briantier.com. Thanks once again for joining me this week, and until next time, keep creating your quarter life comeback.